Session 10. The color crimson. The Diamond Dogs await Eros's return and inform Brambrock III about everything that they have encountered so far. Concerned for everyone's safety, he heads out to run several errands, with the understanding that he is going to be closing his shop and joining them on their travels, alongside his brother, Greg. Mardigan sneaks out as well, looking to fence some items, and successfully locates the agent of the Upside Down, who happens to be the local fence, Vincent, at the Headless Hippogriff. This was the same tailor that Rek had his custom-order clothes made from. Fenwick is able to instead persuade his way out past Greg, promising chocolate cake, and upon reaching the streets of Kersburg, makes for the Crimson Colosseum and arranges a meeting with Céline Leduc. While waiting, he unravels the spell scroll that he had been given by Mardigan, and he uses the spell, sending a message to someone that he could not speak to through normal means. The spell scroll is used, and the parchment disintegrates into fine dust. After but a few moments, it is very clear that Fenwick is disturbed by the message he receives back. Céline ends up making her way into the chamber and beckons him to her office, where they speak about what Céline knows about Fenwick. Much to his surprise, he learns very little that he did not know already, seeing as Rek had learned so much the night prior. Somewhat disheartened, he orders the chocolate cake, gets several scoops of sprinkles to cover it with, and returns to Brambrock's. As the group reconvenes, Eros returns with good news. They have a place to hide. Eros then escorts them all to the shrine of Syrah and the orphanage right in front of it, where they meet Mother Hélène, an older woman with straight, blonde, somewhat silvering hair, wearing plain clothes and playing with the children that she attends to. After some brief introductions, she ends up leading them to a private chamber that she keeps below her office, something that had been constructed many years prior through the help of an old friend. And as they enter the private sanctum, they discuss and plan. Mother Hélène seems very keen and able on reading most of the party. The more she hears and learns of the party, the larger her empathy seems to grow for them. Brambrock III looks over to Kethid and says, "All right, boy, let's head to the rooftop and replace this flower." The last of Brambrock III's even bloom flowers that he had saved from his smithy rooftop, one that would be used for the Eve of Light, if merely to worship the goddess Kamaria, but if not, could be beneficial for the healing of the sick or the infirmed. After some discussion on their own, the Diamond Dogs realize that their best course of action is to lay low, and to use the secured benefit of the private sanctum to keep themselves away from any wandering eyes, be they mundane or arcane, and to await their moment to return to the Crimson Colosseum and compete within the Bronze League competition. After a few days, the competition has come at last. Mother Hélène, desiring to help their party in their efforts in the Colosseum, bestows several blessings to the group. First and foremost, she asks for the divine aid of Syrah on each of them, bestowing an extra measure of healthiness and blessing to the group. Next, she asked which of the 5 of them would be most likely to encounter death before the day was done, and before leaving, gives Fenwick a blessing that he might defy death and ward him against it, at least once, for the next 8 hours. Lastly, she pulls Kethid to the side and says that she has a gift for him, recognizing his loyalty and dedication to Kamaria, a goddess that Syrah seems to get along with, and places 4 diamonds in his hands, each worth 300 some gold pieces, and just the equivalent for restoring life to one who has lost it after only a minute of being dead. Eros is given his special order by Brambrock III, a steel mask that he may place over his face and hide his identity, while not limiting his vision of a battlefield. He will don the mask during the Crimson Colosseum. And the Diamond Dogs make for the Crimson Colosseum. In a holding room, they receive a brief set of rules from Céline Leduc and meet all of the other groups they will be competing against in this tiered challenge of the Bronze League. The groups are informed that in order to proceed to the next round, they must in fact overcome their quarry and not have the longest time in the actual Colosseum, as each individual fight will be timed, and any group that is either eliminated or takes the longest to eliminate their quarry will be disqualified from the next round. The first group is called Crimson Company. They are but stand-ins for a group that failed their trial, and to help fill a time slot, but will be eliminated after the first round. The next group is the Dutiful Dozen. Though only 5 of their 12 number are actually competing, this group has had some bad luck in the past, and looks to change their fate, that they might gain some fame and notoriety in the rest of the city. The next group is referred to lovingly by the crowds as the Heartthrobs, an all-female group that is led by a holy warrior, Brienne Thomas, and are the favorites to win this round. And lastly, a solo gladiator, one who goes by the stage name of Sanguine Steel. Inspired by an old gladiator by the name of Rex Tremende, the only one to successfully solo the Master League, Sanguine desires to solo through the league as well, earning himself certain fame and notoriety, and a place at Rex's side. The competition begins with the Dutiful Dozen in the center of the Colosseum, and right out of the gate, a door hinge squeaks open in the center, from a raised platform, as a foul, undead creature falls forward, leaps up, and begins to attack the individuals there, slashing out with claws, and paralyzing several of the Dutiful Dozen, before eventually they are successful and put him down. Next up is Crimson Company, who take the center stage and end up fighting off a mechanical soldier, one that had been built for these very trials, to rival some low-level golem status. Crimson Company quickly dispatch the steel soldier, and then make way for the Diamond Dogs. Taking to the center of the arena, they see a gate raise, a howl ring out into the air, and a large, dire wolf charging its way towards them. Very quickly, the group lunges into action, and eventually Rek, deciding to rage as well, blinks out of existence and reappears right at the side of the dire wolf, swinging his axe and ending the creature quickly. Great cheers and much surprise it causes the crowd to grow more boisterous and loud in their volume and praise. Sitting back and watching the next fight, the Heartthrobs end up fighting a fire snake, an elemental snake-like creature wreathed in flame, and every time struck by some melee weapon, deals some fire damage back to the creature that struck it. Successful, the Heartthrobs make their way back to their holding room, and Sanguine Steel enters the arena. Here, he solos a giant spider, easily twice or 3 times his size and weight, but through clever training and enough practice, he is able to overcome this bestial arachnid, slaying it to the great cheers and applause of the crowds. In the next round, the Dutiful Dozen take their places, now scattered, after their rather harrowing experience with the ghoul in the last round. And much to their surprise, the gate swings open, allowing for a bipedal carnivorous giant lizard with large rows of serrated teeth to make its way into the arena, and the Allosaurus one by one picks off the Dutiful Dozen, eventually each one falling, and the Dutiful Dozen failing the second round of the Colosseum. At this, the keepers and hunters on the sidelines spring into action, bringing the Allosaurus down, and the arena is reset, awaiting the next individuals to come and fight their quarries. The Heartthrobs take the scene next, and fight a stronger version of a ghoul, this one known as a Ghast, but due to the nature of the holy warrior who leads them, are able to dispatch it with greater efficiency and brutality than the Dutiful Dozen were able to with their ghoul. After that, Sanguine Steel makes his way back into the arena, and upon the gate opening for him, he hears the strange, not-so-thunderous footsteps of a skeletal minotaur, which charges him, and he is able to get out of the way just in time before being gored through. This fight takes somewhat longer, but eventually, Sanguine strikes with his trident to the neck of the minotaur, and then spinning and slamming it with his buckler shield is able to drive it through the final vertebrae, dispatching the minotaur skeleton and earning his place in the next round. Lastly, for this round, the Diamond Dogs return to the arena, and upon their gate opening, await a charging foe, and realize no such thing is coming. As they start to approach the gate, they're curious as to why nothing is taking place when all of a sudden, a huge bolt, shot from a ballista, nearly impales Eros, and the group realizes the creature has not fully walked out into the arena, but spring into action against the ogre bolt launcher that lays in wait for them. Trying to reload his ballista, he fires again, this time an arcane shield protecting Fenwick from what would be probable certain death. Rek, not liking the sight of his friends being in terrible peril, rages once more, but this time the magic in his tattoos shifts to a darker, dangerous black, and tendrils begin to lash out around him. Full of shadow, they strike out at the ogre, causing it fear, and Rek, tunnel-visioned by his necrotic hatred, strikes the bolt launcher down, and the Diamond Dogs proceed to the next round. In the third phase, the Heartthrobs re-enter the Colosseum, and are pitted against a black-coated panther-like creature, with 2 long, furred tendrils off of its shoulders, both ending in terribly fanged, tentacled maws, and the beast seems to shift and blink within the sunlight itself. The group still leaps into action, and though their number are brought low, they are eventually victorious against the displacer beast they are pitted up against. Sanguine Steel makes his way back into the arena for this third round of combat, and as he awaits his quarry at the center of the arena, the crowd watches as he raises his trident, and then seems to lock in place. And after but a few seconds, his body shifts, turning from flesh to stone, as a multi-legged lizard begins to slither its way into the Colosseum, its eyes locked on Sanguine Steel, who has now been completely petrified in stone. the hunters and keepers burst into action once more, grabbing mirrors and approaching the basilisk in order to keep themselves from a similar stony fate that Sanguine has suffered, and are eventually able to recapture the beast and haul it off of the Colosseum floor, leaving the way for the Diamond Dogs yet again to compete. This time, awaiting for whatever their quarry might be, they try to keep watch and vigilance in all directions until Mardigan hears some foul skittering coming from a pool next to him. An 8-legged arachnid beast makes its way from the pool and lunges out towards Mardigan, sinking its mandibled fangs into his shoulder. The poison courses through Mardigan's body, who lets out a cry of pain, and just as soon as the creature had appeared, it vanishes in thin air. The group, panicked, now begin to move up around Mardigan, and eventually watch the beast reappear just outside of them, employing a certain cat-and-mouse tactic, striking and disappearing. Eventually, the group wises to this phase spider creature, and Rek, raging once more, notes strange little angelic creatures that seem to appear right next to the spider, give a small scream, and then explode violently, dealing damage to the creature, and reappearing after 5 or 6 seconds. Eventually, Rek is able again to strike the axe in a very, very critical location on this spider, raking through its thorax with his axe. And while it is trying to escape, Ketherd delivers the final blow with the beaming attack of Guiding Bolt. The final round now having been split 2 ways, a bonus tie-breaking round is announced, and the heartthrobs return to the center of the arena. In but mere moments, they hear the beating of wings and the roar of a lion, as a winged beast with a scorpion-like tail with terrible spines protruding from the end of it, and a lion-like face, torso, and body, takes to the air, but is unable to leave the actual Colosseum, as though trapped by some magical force field preventing anything from leaving the area. It then turns its ire and rage towards the heartthrobs, hurling spines at them from a terrible distance, unable to be struck down by the melee powerhouse that is their holy leader. Eventually, one of the heartthrobs takes a spine through the throat and begins to bleed out. The fight goes downhill very quickly after this fact, as all but one, the holy leader, are dropped and either slain outright or bleeding out, before eventually the leader also succumbs to the terrible might of the Manticore. Before permanent life is lost or any irrevocable damage is done, a red-robed individual steps forward from the sidelines, points his finger at the beast, and releases a sickly green ray, which strikes the Manticore and causes it to disintegrate into fine dust particles. It is then that the healers and clerics rush in, able to resuscitate and revive those who had fallen, but the heartthrobs have failed. All the Diamond Dogs need to do is win in their next round of combat, in order to secure their first place victory. Making their way back into the arena, they arrive to the cheers and the applauding of the crowds, chanting their name, and as they secure their starting positions, the gate raises one final time, and the earth begins to thunder beneath them, as a huge, quadrupedal, plated beast and a large, clubbed tail begins to make its way out, charging towards the group. After several rounds of combat with this Ankylosaurus, the group is successful, taking many blows and giving many back to the armored beast. The monster is slain, and the crowd erupts into tumultuous applause. It is from there that the arena is cleaned up by much of the crew, and the victory platform brought to the center stage, as first place victory is going to the Diamond Dogs, second to the Heartthrobs, and third to the stony Sanguine Steel. The reward, 700 gold pieces, a mark of victory towards the Bronze League accomplishments, and a voucher to pay for a year's worth of a magical license. The group gets to meet Rex Tremende, a large and intimidating presence, and the only individual to have ever soloed the Master League, rumored to have brought down a de-winged adult black dragon on his own. The group, exhausted, battered, and ready for the next leg of their adventure, rest up as they await the departure of the Harrowed Horizon. Session 10's in the books. The color crimson. Oh man, this episode was so much fun. This was a very combat-heavy session. I mean, there were 4 rounds of combat back to back to back to back, and that certainly takes its toll on a party, but they survived. And not only survived, they actually rocked it. Certainly having 3 full casters, as well as a rogue and a barbarian, it's a good party blend. Rek can soak up a lot of the damage, Mardigan deals a ton of damage to single target individuals, and then you have all of the utility of both a bard, a cleric, and a wizard at your disposal. And clerics can be crazy good blasters, as well as wizards. So certainly things went well for the Diamond Dogs today. And that's a good thing, because things had not gone well prior to this point. At least last session was kind of rough. Super awesome, but certainly rough. Either way, the group gets to meet Mother Hélène, another wonderful NPC. And we had another fun little one-on-one moment between a player and myself leading up into this session where Eros goes and tries to secure special housing and help from Mother Hélène. What they talked about, the party doesn't know, and unfortunately, neither does the audience here. I'm sure that will be revealed later on. We'll have to go back and do a recap on some of these things so that I can show all of you what happened somewhat behind the scenes. Now, the party was aware that that was going to be happening. Well, the player group was aware that that was going to be happening, as well as the party too. That was the narrative aspect there. So yeah, that was not a surprise to any of them. What was a surprise was Fenwick's use of the sending scroll that he had gotten from Mardian. And yes, that also was very vague for good reason. I specifically asked my player if they wanted that to be in this recap, and we both decided, no, that needs to be saved. This was too important to reveal at this point in time in the story. Keep watching, it's worth it, I promise. Either way, Mother Hélène ends up offering them this wonderful spot that they can rest and be secure away from any scrying eyes that are watching you, seeing your every move. Well, not in this case, because the private sanctum actually prevents anything like that from happening, which is awesome. And Mardigan makes an interesting note. He asks Eros if there is a special connection between he and Mother Hélène, and eventually reaches the conclusion that Eros is an orphan, and this is where he grew up. Eros can't help but smile. This ends up being a comfort to the group, and they quickly bond with Mother Hélène, who is based on a very dear friend of mine, and I'm very thankful for her. That being said, the Crimson Colosseum ended up being a super fun time for this session, and as I mentioned earlier, took up the vast majority of the actual playtime. For not having combat for several sessions in a row, this ended up being a very nice different pace, I guess you could say, as the party is now thrown into combat after combat after combat, and I must say I was very proud of the resource management. However, Rek only had 3 rages to use, and during that 4th round of combat, the Ankylosaurus did quite a bit of damage to him, because he also wasn't having any of that damage because he didn't have his rage going. So both he lost magical effect, as well as bonus damage and bonus damage reduction. Certainly kept that fight interesting. But thanks to having 2 individuals in the party who can heal at distance, this ended up not being an issue for them. There were certainly some other things that happened off camera. Mother Hélène went around town and gathered a couple of things for the party, who used some of their gold to pay for things that they would need coming into the fight. They also got to pick up an item that I had made called a Vitality Tonic. Imagine a potion of healing, but it only gives you temporary HP. These are each half of the cost of a standard potion of healing, and also vary in strength just like the potions of healing do. The potion lasts for 10 minutes, gives what I would probably describe as shield health to the individual who takes a swig. This ended up creating a nice little health buffer for the party as they needed to dissuade some of the damage they received in the Crimson Colosseum. All that aside, they rocked it, and I was super proud of this party. Their prize was rather hefty, and certainly a lot of fun. I think my favorite part was watching them all kind of roll their eyes at each other as all they had to do was wait until finishing this Colosseum in order to get a year's worth of the license for magical item carrying, but now they have 2 years, so I guess that'll be okay. Needless to say, we learned some things about some characters, we got to see some awesome combat, and we also are getting close to finishing up our time here in Kurzborg, all of which has been incredibly fun. So with that, I reach, well, almost the end. At the end of my combat video, well, teaching new players how combat works in D&D 5e, I made a special shout out to a couple of friends of mine. It was a birthday of one of these 2 friends during that episode, and I gave them a special shout out. Well, now it's time for the other one to have a birthday. Hey Sean, happy birthday. And Zay wanted to ask me to return the favor with this special birthday shout out to Sean. So hey man, happy birthday. Thanks for doing everything that you do. Super glad to have you here at my channel and a part of this community, and I'm really glad you have answered the call to adventure. Here's to many more, and Zay, thank you. Thanks for thinking of your friend. That means a lot, especially in these days when the light needs to shine the brightest. You rock too. To everyone else, thanks for joining. I hope that you liked this episode session recap, and that wherever and whenever you are, you have a blessed day. Adventure's calling, my friends. Are you listening?